Welcome to Unfamiliar Territory, an anime podcast hosted by two white dudes who've been friends for over 15 years. We talk about the history and influence of anime, as well as review anime new and old, believe in the stars, and sail away for the future into unfamiliar territory.
My name is Grant.
And I'm Brantley. Heads up, spoilers on the way. Check the description, see if you're safe to listen. And thanks to the editors of the Reign of the Seven Spellblades Fandom Wiki and Wikipedia for episode summaries used in this podcast. NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. We're recording this in the month of November, and with us, we've got our own resident novelist. Grant, I believe you have some choice words about a certain light novel adaptation that we... I guess at this point, not so recently watched.
So Durarara is a pretty good light novel adaptation, at least for season 1. But we're not talking about that one either. We're talking about Reign of the Seven Spellblades. Reign of the Seven Spellblades is a light novel that is basically dark Harry Potter, which, you know, is a choice. There are a lot of those out there. I'm currently reading a novel called A Deadly Education, which is the first in a dark magic academia genre. So it's not like this is the only one that is trying to take it. So it was written by Bogoto Uno, and it is about a bunch of kids going to a school called Kimberly to become magic. And it's very sloppy. At least the anime is. Once again, we're an anime podcast. We don't read light novels.
Yeah. So if there's anything that's different between the light novels and the anime adaptation, I guess feel free to tell us in the comments, but we will not have any sort of substantial commentary on that here. So apologies if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. It's like... You know, we're not doing any comparative studies. We are not going to talk about the difference between the light novel and the anime, what the light novel does better with the anime. We're just going to talk about the anime as an anime.
Oh,
so
we should probably also mention we're not really fans of light novels in terms of their content anyways. In fact, it might be safe to say that we're something of a set of haters when it comes to light novel adaptations and things. We certainly don't have a good score with them. So if you're someone who's just like, oh yeah, I'm here for a positive review, you might want to search elsewhere.
Yes. We are not... I can't name a single light novel adaptation of an anime that I've been like, this is good. You know, I said that I made the joke about Durarara. I liked the first season, and then I didn't like the rest of it. Which is kind of my problems with light novels in general, because they tend to get muddy in how they are telling a story. It feels that they have a beginning and an end planned out, but all their middles are going to be a bunch of muddled back and forths to try and fill out time so they can sell more volumes. Yeah. And I know that's not the case for everything, and I'm sure there's a light novel out there that I would read and be like, oh, okay, that was pretty good.
And manga definitely have a similar problem.
Absolutely.
You know, someone might write a one-shot and then have to adapt it into a full story, or even just that it takes off and then there's pressure to keep it going even though they wanted to keep it tight, you know?
Right. So, right, and you know, that's why I tend to enjoy anime originals more than basically any other form of anime medium. So let's get started, because this show was 15 episodes, which is a weird number of episodes to have for anime. I honestly thought this could have either been a 12-episode series or a 24-episode series. I think cutting it into the middle made it really sloppy for a lot of different reasons, but we'll get into that. So we come up to episode 1, where we are introduced to our 6 main characters. You are given Michaela McFarlane, Oliver Horn,
Michelle.
What? Michelle? Fuck.
Yeah.
I've been I read all the synopsises and took notes like in the past 2 days, so I will butcher these names.
Because they call her Shella. So
yeah, that's right. Nano Ahibiya, who is a Japanese samurai, or sorry, not Japanese. We'll get into that. Katie Alto, who is like a magical, like demi-human, magical fauna kind of gal. There's Pete Reston, who is a mudblood. He's born without magical family. And then there is Guy Greenwood, who is basically a nothing character throughout all 15 episodes. So we come up to them coming to school for the very first time, and they all are sort of talking to each other and meeting and mingling like you do in a freshman orientation. And during this time, you get a little bit of arguments between Guy and Katie about this parade that is going through the town that the school is in, and how they have a troll there, and Katie wants the troll to be treated as an equal to humans, and everyone's like, oh, that's stupid. And then she is immediately possessed, runs towards the troll, and oh no, the troll attacks her. And because this show doesn't like having structure in terms of how places are run, nobody tries to stop the troll except for our 5 other good boys. And they do a little bit of a fight scene, and they stop the troll, but everything is getting really, really hard. And so Nano, who's not wearing any of the school uniforms like everyone else, she's wearing her samurai uniform. Her hair turns white, and she starts fighting the troll. Oliver Horn, our main goodest boy, who knows everything, is shocked because he knows that this is called the innocent color, and it doesn't make any sense later because they never really mention it again. But it means you can manifest mana better, and so it makes you more powerful. And so they stop the troll. They don't kill it. And the 6 characters that we see kind of come together and like, all right, we can be friends. They go to the school where they meet the headmistress Esmeralda, who talks a little bit about the school's philosophy. Now, here's the problem I have with it. This is going to be like right off the bat, 100%. Esmeralda says that the things that she values at the school is freedom and results, and that 1/5 of the students are either consumed by the spell or die. They are either killed by something in the labyrinth or killed by another student, which is maybe allowed.
That's a 20% mortality rate.
yeah, it's a pretty high mortality rate, and once again, it's like they're not like this is something we encourage. It's like kind of hinted that they do, but it's weird.
Statistically speaking, that means that at least one character in the main group is going to die. That's a little unnerving. It very much has that feeling of like when you're sitting down in an orientation of some sort and they say, look to your left, look to your right, one of these people will not graduate. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, so they do this whole like introduction about how dangerous this school is and how everyone here is going to be great. And they do a little bit of a cool thing where they flip the room upside down using gravity magic, and they have all their food and stuff for the ceremony on the ceiling. I liked that. That's kind of like a silly little... That's a magic school shit that I like, right? If you're going to do magic school, you got to have more of that. The
clownery.
Yeah, like the stairs moving in Harry Potter, right? There's no real reason for that to happen, except it's fun and quirky. And so we get a little background on why everyone's coming to the school. Mishala is a...
Just call her Shella. That's what everyone calls her.
Shella is a daughter of a really prominent magic family. Her father, Theodore, invited Nano to the school because he saw her do cool samurai shit.
So Katie's... some classic, like, old school ethnographer sort of orientalist thing going on.
Yeah. Katie's here to study magical fauna. Guy's here to study magical plants. Pete's here because he's a bookworm. I do think it is funny that, like, he's walking and reading a book. And I know that, like, that's like, oh, look, he loves his book so much, he's going to walk and read with it. I just think it's silly. It's just kind of like, there's better ways to show a character as a bookworm than just give them a book and have them constantly read it. But Pete's here because he's from a non-magical family and he wants to enter the world of magics. And Shella is like, wow, you're an ordinary. You know, we don't have a lot of spots for ordinaries here, which is a little classist, and they don't touch it on it at all. And Oliver is here for a handful of reasons that we'll get into later, but he's just here because he's good with magic. He is the self-described jack of all trades, and by jack of all trades, he's the master of everything.
He's the protagonist.
Yeah.
The light novel protagonist.
Yeah, and so the really funny thing I loved about this part is they bring out a map of the world, of this fantasy world, and Nano's like, I'm from Asia. Not Asia, Asia, which is just Asia with a Z.
Yeah,
which
in the subtitles, they romanize it as AZIA.
It's very funny, because it's like, they're trying to do this almost alternate history world map where there is a corresponding culture to the corresponding cultures they wrote, which is a thing that fantasy authors often do, but they normally try and make it a little less obvious. That one's just straight up like, boom, this is it, we're from Asia.
It's honest, I guess.
Yeah,
nothing else. Just like, look, we know, like, she's a samurai, like, you're gonna have to deal with that, and we're not going to pretend that she's not.
Yeah.
So there.
Yeah. And what I really do think was really funny is that they show a picture of the map, and it looks like a regular Earth map, except Canada and Africa are missing, and Australia. So it's like they just were like, we don't need these countries, just the ones that we're gonna talk about. Which is
gonna delete like a significant portion of the global north and global south. Just like we just like take a diagonal cross section of like just not great.
It's very blatant, and like it's something that like the world map really doesn't matter to us at this point, because it's not like we're getting told these different regions, but they're like, oh, we need a really important map. Hold on one second. I looked up. Sorry. Let me rephrase that. Africa and South America are missing.
Oh, so it's just the global south. That's even worse.
No, wait. South America is pushed somewhere else. It's very serious. It's very weird.
So they just like linearize the
honestly, there is a good chance that they just tried to they tried to make shit real quick, but like once again, we don't need to know what your world map looks like. It could be whatever. That doesn't matter to us at this point. I can go to a map generator, just post it in, and then resketch it. Greenland's missing as well. South America has been shifted heavily towards Europe. Australia just looks like Australia. Like, Europe and, like, Asia are kind of, like, morphed into being weird stuff. Like, it looks, like, a little off. The United States is, like, off. There's no Canada. There's no Mexico. It kind of doesn't really look like America. It's just, like, a landmass is kind of right there. But it is in the same spot that America would be. But Australia looks like Australia. Just, like, straight up.
You can copy my homework. Just make sure it doesn't look like you copied it, okay?
That's exactly what it looks like. I'm gonna send it to you real quick so you can take a look. But once again, you don't need to have it look like that. Also, when you remove Africa, it kind of makes you look bad.
Yeah, not even kind of.
Yeah, it makes you look bad.
Yeah, it's like it would, and alternatively, if you say, oh well, that's Africa and South America's missing, that's also bad.
Yeah,
right.
Like the thing is it's a fantasy map, right? You don't need to have land masses that match our world's land masses. Your cultures can be spread out however you want. But if you're gonna have Australia, just be Australia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, this feels like sort of I want a template for some kind of like othering to be able to happen in geopolitics, but I also don't want to think about how geography relates to politics. So I'm just going to smudge some of real world geography and just, because I mean, we're already on the premise of like Asia, sort of like, that whole problem.
Yeah.
So why not? Why not just, give up?
Yeah. Also, Shella is from Yelgland instead of England. And Katie's from Farnland, and she points to where Finland might be. So that's fun.
So yeah, at least they're consistent.
Yeah.
In that regard.
Yeah. They know that Shella is from the McFarlane family because they are cursed to have curly hair, apparently. But, like, so is a lot of people. Curly hair is not
an anime.
Not, you know what? That's true. That's true. The episode ends with Oliver walking on Nano bathing in the fountain because haha anime moment, and she's like, I'm bathing the blood of my last war, which kind of creates the problems I have with Nano as a character pretty early on. But yeah, episode 1's kind of whack shit and pretty uneventful, all things considered. But it happened.
It really does. I'll say this up front. It does kind of feel like things are just happening a lot.
Yeah.
This partially relates to Oliver as a character and his motivations being hidden or attempted to be hidden, at least in the fiction, for a good amount of the story, and then kind of reaching a climax like in the halfway zone of the season. And so in other words, a lot of these significant events are not really like driven by the protagonists. It really just kind of it seems like things are just kind of happening, right?
Yeah.
Which, I suppose we might point out, oh, well, Harry Potter kind of feels like that. But I feel like this show doesn't have the same, like, rigid school structure that allows for that. This is supposed to be sort of this, like, weirdo Sudbury School situation, do what you want, very little monitoring and things. And so as a result, when things are just happening, there is this very empty feeling of, like, who initiated this and why, and outside of the fiction, is there a good reason for it? And it doesn't feel like that last point is, very often well established.
Yes.
It really does feel kind of ballistic how things happen in this show. Just here and there, things are happening. And oftentimes an episode doesn't have just one sort of straightforward objective.
Yeah, there's B plots and C plots and overarching plots that are just getting mixed in with everything. It's a pacing nightmare.
Yeah, and I assume that it's supposed to be emulating this, like, sort of school day feel of, like, all right, we're going from class to class and, like, different things are happening, but by sort of attempting to shuffle that together without binding those events under a theme or a trajectory, it feels like nonsense. It feels like it's all over the place. We're probably going to talk about Harry Potter a lot, and I'm sorry because I don't care for it, and J.K. Rowling can fucking suck a dick in hell. But
it is unfortunately
it's the basis of, it's the anchor point here.
Yeah.
And so you'll notice that in those books, like, because Harry's kind of the center of the universe, there is always some kind of binding element where it's like Harry's going to his classes and the entire time he's getting picked on by this one asshole adult, or Harry's got this thing he wants to research, and so whenever he gets an opportunity, he's going to try to find a character in the scene to talk to them about it. And if there's no one to talk to about that, that probably won't happen. Like, those events will be ignored, right? We'll just skip time. It's possible too that I'm misremembering. Maybe the books had a lot more just like
Nope,
this nonsense pace. But...
That's how the books work.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, it really does feel sporadic. And I don't think it benefits this show's storytelling as a result.
Yeah, no, it maybe would work better in a book setting, but even with that, I feel like there's so much shit getting thrown at you at once that it might be overwhelming in a book as well.
Mm-hmm.
The next episode is mostly kind of like, welcome to Kimberly, here are your duties. You get a little montage to kind of get to know the characters a little bit. Guy is lazy, Pete is a hard worker, Katie is a cinnamon roll who wants to help people. Nano juggles between being innocent cinnamon roll and also super emotionalist super soldier, depending on what the story wants. That goes away pretty quickly though, but at the first part, that's pretty much how it is.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the theming. I have opinions on that.
I do too. We talk a little bit about why wizards use swords that they call anthames, I think is how they pronounce it. But it's stupid that they just don't call them swords.
His name Spellblades is literally in the translated title of this show.
Yeah. They're not Spellblades though, because Spellblades are a specific.
That's
type.
True. Yeah, I forgot about that entirely.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
So it's okay. You suck. We get it. So they carry swords because 400 years ago a wizard got stabbed in a magic duel. They're like, well, we can't get stabbed anymore, which I think is really funny.
Yeah.
I kind of like that, where it's like, yeah, wizards thought they were hot shit for so long until one got stabbed, so now we all carry swords. I think that rules. I think that's good.
That does feel like some actual historical horse shit that would happen,
Yeah, I actually like that. We meet another character who's going to be one of many rival students to the group, Richard Andrews, who I will now and only call Dick Andrews. He volunteers because they're learning about swords in their sword class, and he's like, I'll fight Nano.
Yeah.
Nano. Because
Nano.
Yeah. Nano.
I'm gonna kiss you.
Fuck off.
It's okay, I'll cut this out.
No, don't. I can't pronounce names, just in general.
In that case, just do Nano.
Nano. Okay, that works. He's like, I'm gonna fight Nano, because he wants to prove that he's cool. And Oliver's like, wait, he's gonna use magic, and Nano doesn't know any spells, and then he's gonna be really embarrassing. So Oliver, being the goodest boy, decides to take it into his own hands, as he will for the rest of the series, and he volunteers to fight her, so that he knows that, it's an even fight. Shella then is like, well, I'll kill Richard Andrews. I wrote down in my notes, Shella volunteers because she wants to kill Richard Andrews in front of as many witnesses as possible. But no, Shella volunteers because she's like, well, if he beats me, then it is impressive, and maybe he'll leave Nano alone. The two duel, and Oliver's like, well, I won't use magic to make it fair. They fight, and while they're fighting, Nanao starts crying because of PTSD from war. And Oliver's like, wow, she's actually really good at fighting, so they continue to fight. But time runs out, and Luther, the sword master, stops them. Shella and Richard cancel their duel because there's not enough time to show them dueling, because immediately we got to get on to the next class. So we get a little bit of interaction between Oliver and Nanao about oh, she is carrying these burdens of being a soldier at such a young age, and fighting makes her cry. And that's about it from that, and that she's also competent as a sword fighter. That's really it.
Did they also bring up yet the whole killing instinct kind of thing, or is that later?
They might have. A lot of this comes from checking summaries and then watching scenes, because I didn't want to rewatch the entire series.
Yeah. So just know that at some point they do have to sort of talk about the fact that two of these characters are indeed on hair triggers to just kill each other. And they're our main protagonists.
I think that is in this one. I think that's why Luther stops them, because he's like, oh, they'll kill each other if I don't stop them.
Yeah. So yeah, really, really cool, fun thing. It's one of those things that really complicates their characters and not in a good way. I feel like it's supposed to add nuances to, like, you know, oh, the horrors of, you know, kids learning combat and what do we make of this? But at the same time, they almost never walk this back in a moralizing direction after this. And if anything, they give the characters sort of like moral right to, you know, take revenge where needed. So it's a somewhat, it's the pro-violence stance, I think, sways depending on who the opponent is. But in any case, they don't do anything grand with the whole like killing instinct thing yet. No. It's got maybe another mention or two here and there where someone goes a little too far, but it's just they put a pin in that and then they can release that again later when they feel like it.
Yeah. So they do their whole duel, and then they go on to Spellology class, which is what they call it, which is a very terrible name for a magical class. I
mean, if you think about it, like, we kind of do the same thing.
Yeah, you're right. Geology is just rock science. You're right. Yeah. I get it. But still, like, I guess it is weird because there's a bunch of different forms of spells in this, and it's like they're all encompassed in one. I guess that's my problem. Mm-hmm. But they do a magical biology class, and we get to see Katie get super stoked. And we get probably the oddest class in the entire series because the lady that's in charge of it is this like super duper mean, like rigid instructor, and they have to produce silk using these magical silkworms so that they can by fusing them with magic. But if they feed too much into it, then the silkworms will turn into monsters, so you have to be very careful. And if they turn into monsters, you gotta incinerate them. And since Katie loves animals, she takes her a long time to do it. She's totally good, she's A-okay, she's winning, and then eventually the last one turns into a monster. And then Oliver and Shella fight the monster. And once again, we have this event that happens, and Oliver is going to thrust himself into the forefront of it to save everyone. Mm-hmm. Now, the really weird part about this whole thing, so they save the day, they kill the monster, everyone does their thing, and then the teacher tells Oliver and Shella that they lost points because they helped someone. Now, that's super weird because the entire purpose of the school is freedom and results. I think that helping someone is invoking your individual freedom as an academic at this school to get results.
Yeah.
It's super stupid. It's like they equate freedom with individualism, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, to be free means not to rely on anyone ever. And it's dumb as fuck.
And it's also totally contrary to any of the character development that we're getting later on when they're growing more as a group. Heck, the freaking opening where they're all putting their not Spellblades together, like, it's so contrary, and just, it really raises eyebrows when you're, like, counting how many of these teachers are just seemingly, like, they don't want to be there. Like, yeah, it's assholes wall to wall.
There's a couple
with maybe one person who's like a mild douche in comparison.
There's a couple nice ones, mm-hmm. But you're right. Most of the teachers are kind of assholes, which does explain Oliver's motivation later. But we'll get into that.
Mm-hmm. It really makes me question, like, it's like, sure, this is a school where they're not going to hold your hand and you're expected to, operate, on your own, and high expectations, blah, blah, blah. But, like, I don't know why they would actively hire, like, ineffective faculty, right? Like, why would you hire someone who's just known for fucking with people?
Right.
That sounds like a nightmare for any, like, administrative meetings you have to do at the very least. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like, imagine putting all these assholes in one room, and now they have to decide on, you know, whose classes are getting, you know, like, priority on scheduling for which rooms and whatever. Like, it'd be fucking chaos. Like,
Yeah,
they can't even treat kids nicely. Like, my God, like, it's such a weird flaw in the world building of this. Like, they equate eccentricity with, like, this cold-bloodedness, and it ultimately just makes this school feel like a bad idea plus terrible execution.
Yes. It's bad. Let's continue with this episode. They get shorter, I promise. Katie goes to the nurse where Oliver tells her she can't be an angel anymore because she's not in the paradise that was her home. But he will admire her if she tries to be kind, which is just a fucking terrible thing to say to someone. And we are also introduced to yet another character named Teresa, who is a super secret spy who is talking to Oliver about some secret business. Ooh, spooky. Pete loses his spellbook, and so Oliver goes with Pete and Shella to find it, because of course they do. They accidentally stumble into the labyrinth that is the school is built on top of, and they meet another fucking character named Ophelia Salvadori, who uses womb magic to summon chimeras out of her womb, which is a thing that they are very clear about as they're trying to keep her from killing them. Cyrus Rivermore, who is a bone mancer, shows up with a giant bone snake and starts fighting Ophelia. And that's where that episode ends. It gets weird from here, but once again, as we talked about, it's just fucking sloppy. There's so much shit happening in so many episodes, and they're trying to cram all these characters in, and you just can't get to it. Episode 3, we learn a little bit about Nano, and it is fucking wild. So we cut back into the fight between Ophelia and Cyrus, and they're doing this whole shtick, and they get stopped by the student council. Now, this is another weird thing. If, once again, you are valuing freedom and the results of your individual students, why have a student governing body?
Yeah.
And so they fight, and what's stupid is that, like, the three main characters try to leave. They're like, oh, we're not a part of this fight. Cyrus and Ophelia are fighting, but Cyrus is like, nope, you can't leave, because conflict, right? Like, he exists specifically to keep them inside this conflict that they're not really a part of. Nano shows up, destroys the bone wall, and then she talks about how this place is a place where men die, a feeling that she knows, because once again, super serious soldier. We meet two of the student councils, Alvin Godfrey, who's the student council president, and Carlos Withrow, who is a agender student, which is a big W for this show, I will say that, who threatens Ophelia, and then Cyrus and Ophelia leave because they can't fight Carlos and Alvin says they're going to punish them later, which is once again weird. Why does the student council have a place to punish students for fighting each other, but the school doesn't?
Yeah.
Fuck if we know.
It seems like the student council sort of has more executive authority, or at least, like, intentional authority, than any of the faculty do.
Yes. We get another lecture from Oliver onto another student, where Oliver lectures Nano about fighting the two upperclassmen, which would be suicide, because why would you do that? And she's like, well, maybe I want to die, because I used to be a samurai who fought in war, and I went to go fight a warrior who was the best warrior of this clan, and I accidentally killed him before I got to know his name, and he was a poet, so goddamn, I didn't even get to know this guy. and then she was going to get executed by the rest of the warriors, but was saved by Shella's dad, and says, come to the school. And then she says her dream in life is to fight someone she respects and admires with no anonymity between them. Like, oh, we're just going to fight because we want to see who fights, which is fine. That is a fine fantasy thing, whatever. I know, like, a lot of people talk about, like, martial arts and stuff being the same way. But it's kind of this weird, like, all right, we're 3 episodes in, we're getting this tragic backstory for this character and her one goal. And so she's like, Oliver, I want to fight you. And Oliver's like, absolutely not. And then she's like, okay, I guess I'm fine. And then Shella's like, wow, did you fall in love with him? Because you're acting super weird. And Nana was like, yeah, kind of. He's super respectful. And then, like, that's it, right? She's done. She is no longer going to be a dangerous, daring character who wants to fight because she secretly has PTSD and depression from all the people she's killed. She just gets turned into, like, this moe blob that will occasionally do some waxing poetic things about fighting. And it kind of sucks. And it also sucks because it is just, it's just another Oliver is going to be the one to lecture them moments, you know? Yeah. We learn what a spellblade is, and there's 6 different, they're not actual swords, they're actually techniques, there's 6 of them, and they kill an opponent without fail, and they say this within 1 spell distance, which is a super arbitrary, like, range. What the fuck is a spell distance?
Yeah.
We don't know, but it says that, and so they figure there's 6 of them. They're super cool. Tough guy Dick comes and says that Oliver and Nano need to practice, and then says, hey, why don't you come to the labyrinth in this Colosseum and you can join our fight? And they're like, maybe. We find out that Richard and Shella have backstory, but it doesn't fucking matter. The troll that attacked Katie is trapped. The school trapped him and they're gonna kill him because he attacked a person. We meet Darius Grenville, who is the alchemy professor and is a huge bastard. Huh, would you look at that? Potions teacher being a bastard. Huh. And he calls Katie stupid for wanting demi-humans to have rights and uses the torture spell on Katie. An upperclassman named Milligan shows up and says, hey, Oliver, don't do anything because we gotta let this happen. Luther comes in, the sword instructor, and tells Darius you can't use pain spells on students because it's been banned for 5 years, which is not a lot of time.
Yeah. Also, like, the fact that you have to tell a hired member of faculty, don't torture students? Like, why the fuck did you hire this guy? Like, and why did you hire any of the other people who made this rule exist? Oh my god, like...
Yeah. No, it's very stupid.
Like, there's already an issue of, like, academia in the ivory tower in which, like, so often scholars are sort of separated from the real world, and so they become desensitized to, like, everyday violence through systems and like, interpersonal issues and stuff. So, like, there's that. But the fact then that, like, it's, like, you would think, like, oh, here's these scholars that, like, really don't treat combat for what it, you know, amounts to in many, like, struggling situations. Instead of that, you just have a bunch of, like, seemingly, like, sadists walking the campus. Like, it's so, like, it's bizarre, to say the least.
Yeah, it's very weird, and, like...
And also, why not just fire the guy now? He broke one of the easiest rules to not break.
Brantley, because they're setting him up to be a bastard because he dies in 3 episodes. That's why.
Oh, Grant, you're right. Should have used Future Sight to understand that he needs to be benched briefly.
Yeah.
So they can be disposed of later.
Yes. So fucking it sucks, right? It sucks. Katie is told that she is now responsible for the troll. Vera Milligan is also an animal rights activist and is like, "Hey Katie, why don't you and I hang out for a little bit? Nothing bad will happen." And so Oliver and Nano go to a duel with Dick. And that all happened in one episode, right? We got the upperclassmen meeting the student body council, learning about Nano's backstory, learning about Spellblades, learning about Shella's backstory with Richard, Nano kind of falling in love with Oliver for a little bit, and the setup for episode 3, right? It is, episode 4. It's so much just packed into 22 minutes.
Yeah. And
it's so hard to breathe. It's so hard to really get to know these characters because you're just constantly going from one thing to another. And once again, it's Oliver that's going to save the day. It's Oliver making the decisions. It's Oliver doing everything. He's supposed to be this average student, right? Like, he is constantly saying he's average. But he's not, because he's better than everyone about just about everything.
Yeah.
Or if he's not, he's the planning guy.
Here's a fun little game you can play. Whenever there's, like, a major matter being concerned, wait how long it takes for it to circle the drain and eventually come back to everyone looking at Oliver to make a decision or say something about it.
Yeah.
That or just straight up intervene. Yeah, it's ridiculous how frequently it happens. And you too can predict every single one of those moments from here on because it's very, very telegraphed.
So Oliver and Nano go to the Coliseum to... Oh, wait, hold on. Before we get to that, here's another inconsistent plot point in this fucking school system. Katie is bullied by people for caring about animal rights activists stuff.
Demi-human stuff.
Yeah, demi-human stuff. Oliver and Nano and Guy, did you forget about Guy? Because the show seems to, decide that they're going to fight the bullies, and they beat them up, and are sent to a detention, which is just a prison cell. But why is there detention where the students are regularly encouraged to fight?
Yeah.
And I get it. Maybe it's like, oh, no fighting on school grounds. You can fight in the labyrinth, but you can't fight on school grounds. But then why didn't they mention that?
Yeah. Also, the labyrinth is, like, a horrible place to fight because it's incredibly deep, sprawling. Like,
it takes a while to get there.
There's a world down there. Yeah, and so if someone were to die, like, it would be incredibly hard to scout for them. And, like, hell, that's a fucking plot point later. Like, right? So, like... It's so terribly, terribly designed and implemented, right? Like, if you want to say, hey, only fighting in these certain arenas on campus, then sure. You know, that's a regulatory method that makes, if nothing else, the clerical work easier. But, yeah, the fact that, like, they get in a scuffle with bullies and then, like, jail detention... And then I don't think we ever see that happen to anybody again, including people who go far more over the lines. Maybe I'm forgetting and they do get jailed for a while. I don't know, but just kind of sometimes things just happen in the show, and you just have to pause it and just like, wait, why did that happen the way it did? It's a lot of rewinding we did when we watched this. A lot of, hold on, go back. Like,
yeah, what the fuck? What the fuck happened? It's nonsense. It's nonsense. And don't worry, it gets more nonsense. So Oliver and the rest of his crew go to the labyrinth because they are going to watch him duel Richard. But it is actually this massive coliseum in which it looks like everybody from Kimberly is there. There's so many people at this coliseum. It's ridiculous. And Richard's like, hey... We're actually not going to fight. Instead, we're going to fight these kobolds, and we're going to kill them for sport.
Blood sport. Yay.
Yeah. And so whoever kills the most kobolds wins. And, like, they don't want to fight. Like, there's, like, a kobold, like, clearly trying to escape, and they just murder it. And Nano lectures them on that's not right to fight things because it's time for her to enter the lecturing world where she gets to tell characters what is right and what is wrong.
Mm-hmm. She is a protagonist after all, right up there with Oliver. So
that's true. And so a Birdman comes, a Garuda, and starts murdering the shit out of all these students. Or at least you would think, but actually it's later revealed that actually no one died in this thing. Which is ridiculous, because if you want to do dark academia where students regularly die, don't fucking chicken out. Do it. But they don't, right? Like, they just show these teenagers getting brutally, what looks like murdered. And then, like, they're like, well, luckily no one died, they say, like, 2 episodes later.
Yeah, you get, like, some shots of some of them being healed. But it's like, Jesus.
Yeah. Anyway, and, like, the kobolds, like, run to the stand and start, like, ripping them apart. Like, it's so wild that they just didn't commit to it.
Mm-hmm.
So Nano and Oliver fight the Garuda, and what's really funny is that this animation in this episode is fine, but they failed to fill in the stands with students. So whenever there's an action scene with Nano and Oliver, they are alone. There's no other student anywhere to be seen. And also the Coliseum grows impossibly big. Mm-hmm. It's like they forgot the scale of what they were utilizing. They fight the Garuda and they win. And Richard helps out. And like he's like, wow, I can't believe you were so confident in fighting that Birdman. And Nana's like, of course, samurai are always confident. That's what we are. But we just saw her cry a couple episodes while fighting. It's fucking ridiculous. That episode sucks.
Do you remember how the Garuda, like, spelled out a message?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was like, now you will know what it's like to be hunted.
Yeah.
Which is like connecting it back to Katie's thing. And then it is never, ever talked about again in this anime. I'm sure it's in the light novel.
At this point, if you are particularly keen on pattern recognition, you might be thinking, wow, this is like a hefty amount of like demi-human plot development stuff that we're getting, like even when Katie's not directly in this scene. So like I guess this is like a major part of this. Maybe this is going to be Katie's arc and then it's going to slow down a bit. That's interesting considering that it's not really something that Oliver and Nana were, like, personally committed to. You know, like, Nana won't even stand up necessarily for the rights of demi-humans. It's not like she's taking after Katie. She's just like, hey, there are noble principles as to why we do and don't fight, and you're not following those.
Yeah.
And so, like, as if, you know, anything that Katie has been sort of leading has really not rubbed off on them. And so it's like, okay, this is a lot of this. I guess this is just Katie's bit, right? But stay tuned, because it's not. You're gonna get even more of this stuff, beyond this segment of the show.
Yes. Yeah. So that episode sucked. And the next episode we get more characters. Teresa is sad that she couldn't protect Oliver. And Oliver's like, dude, it's fine. Katie and Milligan talk a little bit about the troll. And Katie gets close to the troll a little bit, tries to feed him and stuff. And everyone thinks the Garuda was placed in the Coliseum by demi-human rights activists. Most of the people hate the crew now because they've kind of shown up and just started kicking ass. And Oliver's like, why doesn't anyone like me? And they keep bullying them. Guy talks to the teachers about it, and they won't help them because freedom. I don't know. They don't help the kids getting bullied. But for some reason, Nano is popular because since she killed the Garuda, she's super cool. Everyone loves her, but hates the rest of them for sticking their necks out. And then Shella's like, well, I think that since Oliver also helped fight the Garuda, he deserves a victory kiss. And Nano is like, wait, if he gets a kiss, I want to kiss him too. And they go, and Oliver's like, fine, I'll kiss you, Nano. And they go to kiss, but Oliver's cousin just shows up, and Oliver's cousin kisses him. And so out of this whole, like, tease, oh, who's going to kiss who, it's a fucking cousin kiss. Dumb. It's fucking stupid.
And if you're like me, you're gonna think, oh, was that actually, like, Teresa in disguise or something? Like, seeing as, like, she's, like, set up to be someone who's close to Oliver and, like, supposed to be watching over him all the time, it's like, I guess then it would be as reasonable for her as anyone else to be attracted to him, especially with, like, the low bar we have set already. But no, it's just an entirely new character that has in fact not been brought up until this point, as Grant said.
Yeah, and so it's like, oh, fuck, what the hell? Okay, new character, let's go. They kiss, and then they talk about how kissing in some cultures isn't considered romantic, blah blah blah. Makes sense, but it's also very stupid from a perspective of a writer who was writing the kiss to be romantic in the first place.
Yeah.
We get the alchemy class scene with the alchemy teacher who tortured Katie, and shit starts to go bad. And don't worry, since Oliver's in the class, he's there to save it. Despite the fact that we have shown no proficiency in alchemy whatsoever before this, he saves everybody from dying in an explosion. And the teacher compliments him and says, "You did a good job, Mr. Oliver," which is fucking stupid because in the last time he tried to help people avoid disaster, he lost points.
Yeah.
So we go back to Katie, and the troll is now talking, and the troll warns Katie not to talk to him because it's dangerous. And they realize that the troll probably didn't attack Katie on purpose, and then they go to find Katie, and she's missing. And they go to the labyrinth to find Katie, and Milligan has taken her, and talked about how she didn't think that trolls were too... Milligan was like, trolls aren't intelligent enough for speech, but I have gifted them the ability to speak, which in itself is a little problematic in the whole, like, treating this as a civil rights thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they did it on purpose, but it is not well done. And she's like, I'm gonna do a little bit of surgery on Katie. And so Nano and Oliver go to fight Milligan, who reveals that she's Snake Eye Milligan. She has a basilisk eye in her hand and in her head. I fucking hate this episode. I think this is where this is kind of where everything really gets, like, muddled, in my opinion. Like, I do kind of like the whole, if done right, having Oliver have the secret little entourage of people that he's working with to do something that we don't know. That could be interesting. But because Oliver is not an interesting character, we never really beg the question why he's working with these people. Mm-hmm. He's so generic that it's so hard to, like, really root for him or really get invested in whatever storyline he's having on the side.
Yeah, and any crumbs of information they're giving are not enough to formulate, like, a meaningful assumption of what he's doing. Even if you could just nail down, like, I bet he's gonna kill X bastard on this campus for Y background reasons. I don't think it would be satisfying to have come to that conclusion, right?
Right.
It really doesn't feel like... It feels like every time that they have one of these scenes where, like, he and Teresa will talk, they'll either talk in such coded language or so little at all that you can't glean anything meaningful from it. And so it really just feels like a waste of time. It's only there to just remind you that those characters do have something that's supposed to eventually happen. You know, it's a trailer for a trailer. That's what it is. You know, mm-hmm. It's like, stay tuned. Eventually, you'll hear about something.
Yes, it's very, very, very frustrating, and it's so. The thing is, this is a season-long plot thread, right? You drop hints about it through a 12-episode anime, and then it ends with the reveal at the finale, right, that this is a thing. But this show didn't want to take the time to do that. It doesn't want to drop hints. It wants you as the reader to know what is going to happen as soon as possible, but they're going to kind of fake it, right? We're going to drop hints, but you're not actually able to figure out anything based off the hints we're giving. And instead, you're just kind of wondering what's going to happen. There's really no discussion that can be happen, but it's lazy.
It feels
it's
like an alarm going off that you forgot you set.
Yeah, you're like, oh, right, that's, yeah.
Oh, this character, Jesus, I forgot she existed. Okay, well, alright, back to this.
What's wild is we get introduced to these new characters, and we still know nothing about Guy and Pete at this moment, right? Two of our main characters are nothing. So Oliver and Nano fight Milligan in the next episode, and they're like, oh, we can't beat her, but Oliver has a plan. He's going to distract her so that she can't look at Nano, so Nano can go for the killing blow. And while she's doing that, she's like, haha, I actually have another Basilisk Eye in my hand. And so Nano's like, I need to move faster than the speed of light to avoid being cursed. And she does it. And that right there is the 7th Spellblade. So there you go. That's why it's called the 7 Spellblades, because Nano invents it on accident.
Editor's note. Nana in Japanese can mean the number 7, so Nano's name could be a self-fulfilling prophecy for her 7th Spellblade ability. Oh, God.
They defeat Milligan, they knock her out, cut off her basilisk's hand, and Nano requests a kiss from Oliver, and it doesn't happen because Carlos and Alvin show up. Those bitches. No romance is happening under their watch. And so, since that kind of gets diffused, Katie's excited since the troll can speak. The school can't get rid of it because it's new. It's a new species. And she kisses Oliver for saving her, and then she also kisses Nano for saving her. And I just have in quotations bisexual win, even though it's very much like a peck on the cheek innocent thing.
We'll take anything Oliver, we can get. And this, hell yeah, this is at least like there's definitely an attempt to include some progressive elements in the show. So
yeah,
again, yeah, we'll take this. We'll fucking take it.
And so Oliver is happy that Katie can be an angel. He's like, well, I'm glad that you didn't take my lecture to heart and you're still being kind. Darius is like, hey, Oliver, I saw how cool you were in alchemy. Why don't you come over here and help me get rid of some monsters? And he's like killing all these monsters. And he's like, did you know, Oliver, I think there's a problem with the human race and that they're stupid people. And since Milligan can make trolls smart, I think I can use that to make humans smart. I'm going to get rid of stupidity. And then Oliver's like, that sounds like a stupid idea. Hey, Darius, where were you at this specific date? And he's like, how do you know about that specific date? Oh, shit, that's the night that I killed a woman who is Oliver's mom. And so Oliver and Darius fight. And Oliver uses Future Sight to realize he'll die in every single future except for one, and that is the one in which he uses the Spellblade Angustavia, which I wrote down because I wanted to. So Oliver has access to a Spellblade, and Darius is like, what? How do you have access to a Spellblade? I killed the woman that was the last person that knew how to use it. And he's like, oh shit, you're her son, aren't you? Oliver completely does like a 180 in his personality, and now he's like a dark and brooding edgelord. He's like, I will show you the 128 forms of pain that you made my mom feel until you say the right words. So he just keeps torturing this guy until he asks Oliver to kill him, and he's like, those were the right words, and he kills him. After he kills him, we see Oliver's cousins, Shannon Sherwood, who's Oliver's female cousin, and Gwen Sherwood, who's Oliver's male cousin. And they're like, Oliver, that's the second time you use the Spellblade, and you can't use it 3 times. And Teresa shows up.
Hold on. I completely forgot that was a thing. Why is that?
I don't know. It's never explained. I'm sure there's a reason, but it's not in the anime.
Oliver, if you use your Spellblade more than 3 times, you'll blow up!
And Teresa shows up as well, and she's like, I am your humble servant, Oliver, because I can't be anything else. And they find out that this group of 4 people are here to kill seven people. They're going to kill, I have their names written down, but it really doesn't matter too much. They're going to kill a bunch of teachers and the headmistress because they killed Oliver's mom. This episode's a lot. It's a fucking lot. Once again, we get 2 fight scenes in the 22-minute episode. We get some background knowledge, a completely new espionage story. It's a lot. It's fucking insane.
Yeah, we also hit a major climax for Oliver's character. Like,
yeah. Oh, and also we learned that Nano can use a spellblade.
Yeah,
right.
We revealed 2 spellblades in one episode. Then,
yes,
I'm fucking booking it, and we killed the phrenologist.
Yes.
What episode was this? Like 6? Now, that's halfway through a standard season, right?
Yes.
But then it turned out this would have 15 episodes. I swear to God, maybe, it's possible that I overlooked this or something, but I thought that this was rigged up in my anime list to be like 12 episode series. And then at some point it just went whoop and flipped to 15. Yeah, it already was, I think, bad enough that kind of the height of Oliver's character happens here at episode 6 when it was halfway. But the fact that it's a 15 episode season, it's even earlier than that. Which means we're spending the rest of the season doing shit that's not actually core to the main character. Like, which is not that it's like on that I don't want to write that off as like a principle of good storytelling or bad storytelling, but like I think that for this kind of show, which already struggles to characterize Oliver as like a consistent and likable person, this is a bad sign.
Yes, absolutely. You ready to keep going?
Yes.
All right. Episode 7. I have my notes based on episodes, and this one is called Episode 7, Reign of the Seven Spellblades has gay rights? Question mark. The League of Evil Teachers are worried because Darius is dead, and they don't know who did it. Pete wakes up as a girl because he is what they call a reversey, which sometimes turns into women and sometimes turns into men. It's an interesting concept that isn't really super explored too much, but we'll take it.
It's a trans allegory.
It's more like a gender fluid allegory because, like, Pete, it can be both.
Trans being like a umbrella term over more specifically gender fluid.
God, I can't believe you're not being specific. But no, it works sometimes. It is a little. We don't really see too much of Pete deal with being a reversey, besides the fact that he can do thunder magic, because he's a woman and women are better at certain magics than men, which is a little gender essentialist, but
a little.
It's
we'll get there. We'll save that for the end.
We meet another fucking character. We meet 2 new characters. We meet Stacy, who is Shella's sister, and her wolf boy attendant, Faye. Which is, don't worry, we meet them for a little bit and then they disappear. We do a little broom flying lesson, and I really like that the brooms are living creatures. I think that's kind of neat. It's brooms having personality isn't super unusual, but it's fun to explore it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's stick bug idea, but like to brooms. So
yeah,
sure.
Nano is great at flying, and she picks a broom that is like super super hard to fly on, but she's great. Pete and Guy don't get a broom.
Couldn't be Guy.
Can't be Guy. Guy can't get shit. So they
fucking kick a guy while he's down.
Yeah. They go to alchemy, the alchemy class, and since Darius is dead, Theodore is now the new teacher. fucking whatever. He talks about. It is really funny because we talked about like the like obsession with Asian cultures and this guy doing that whole shtick.
Mm-hmm.
He asks if anyone has read Journey to the East, in this class, and Stacy has read 12 volumes, and then he's like, I don't give a shit about you, Stacy. Pete, how much did you read? And Pete's like, he read everything, and Teddy's like, well, I'll bring you a present next time I come from Asia. Like, he's literally just like a British noble explorer from the 1800s.
Yeah, put a pith helmet on him, like.
Yeah, and that is a fun character archetype, but he's not portrayed so much as a bastard for it, right? Like,
they don't problematize it whatsoever.
Yeah, and like whatever. I mean, this is being written by an Asian man who might find that trope fun to write, but it's still weird. But I like that they kind of lean into it a little bit more. I like that a little bit.
I don't.
Well, I like the character.
I know what you mean.
And the thing is that we do realize that Teddy is a bastard, just not here yet.
Mm-hmm.
So magical engineering happens with Enrico Forgahiri, who is one of the teachers that Oliver is here to kill. They have to dismantle a bunch of traps because he's like, I've engineered these traps to go off. Good luck. No, everyone's having a hard time. I didn't mean for this. I wrote this down, and it seems really, really misogynistic, but it wasn't supposed to be, but I'm going to read it verbatim. Mechanical engineering happens with bad teacher Enrico Forgahiri, and they have to dismantle traps. Everyone does it well, but Pete, who is struggling because he's a woman. I was trying to say that because he is now in a different body than he is used to. He's having a hard time.
Yeah, but written out of context.
It sounds
terrible.
Yeah. Pete is unable to dismantle his traps, and so snakes jump out of it. Oliver jumps in front of the snakes and gets bitten by them because, of course, Oliver's the one to take the bullet. Enrico applauds everyone, and he's like, "You guys were never any danger. Here, take these lollipops, which have snake antidote." And of course, Oliver doesn't lose points for helping.
Yeah.
We established that. Like, that's the first thing we established, and then they never do it again. Oliver is then the person to explain Pete what a reversey is, which is very tone deaf because Oliver is not a reversey or even remotely close to this, right?
Yeah.
He's just a guy. And so he's the one that's like, I'm gonna be the one to lecture you on your changing body. And it's so fucking stupid.
Mm-hmm. The support group is fun, but like...
Yeah.
It's like, why Oliver? Again, like, anybody else could have, I felt like, been a better candidate. But instead, we picked the guy who, like, time and time again... doesn't really actually, like, side with his friends all that much as he, like, decide, like, conveniently it's like, well, this fits into my standards of life and wisdom, so I guess we are gonna do this, Yeah, it's so condescending, and it robs Pete of an opportunity to go and learn, right? Like, Pete's whole character is about learning. Like, why could Pete not find a book on this? In a way, there is like it is like a semblance of the experience of like going through your life, like in the LGBTQIA plus spectrum and feeling totally alone when in reality you're not, and also being sort of deprived of that information. But they don't plot out that is sort of systemic or intentional. It's not problematized, and so it just so happens that this was, like, something Pete never came across in all of these studies over the years, just, it's so bizarre. For a show that really seems, and I should say a work, that seems to want to tell you, hey, we care about our, secondary and tertiary characters, for them to take that from Pete, that feels so bad. Yeah.
And like, you could have had a character who, like, fucking make a guy gay. And he's like, oh, I know a place that might help you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
We
Boom,
we already have, like, the sort of, like, I mean, we talked a little bit before that Katie is at least open to the idea of, like,
kissing women.
Yeah, biromanticism. So, like, she would be a better candidate, you know? Like, really, it's so upsetting. I don't think it's... I don't want to say that it's indicative of the author's views, to be like, oh, I'm going to pilot the next generation into a world of understanding of their own position. I'll be the one to do it, you know. But it does, I think, reflect at least somewhat of a misunderstanding of that, what that experience is like, and the needs of a person in that situation, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's sloppy.
Yeah.
And but Oliver does take Pete to the Magic LGBTQIA+ club, which is nice. And it is cool because they see Carlos is there, and they are like, hey, this is where a lot of people who have, you know, are agender or magically gender changed or whatever. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that they kind of, like, hint at being, like, normalized in this world. And this is where they hang out. Also, fun fact, Gwyn, Oliver's cousin, is playing the violin during this. So he's part of the Magic LGBTQIA club for some reason. We don't know, but he's there.
Cool. Why couldn't he have helped me?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I guess then there is the slight chance that Oliver knows about this stuff through Gwyn.
That's
fair.
Like, that's fair.
It's still, like, at least, maybe I just totally blanked it and missed it. But, like, then why not say, hey, like, there's someone in my family who goes to this place. I'd like you to check it out, you know, or something like that.
Yeah, make the connection more obvious.
Yeah. If you built it, then, you know, take the reader on that journey.
Yes. It's weird. It's sloppy, but it's fine. You know, like, it is. At least it's there, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's like, I can feel that it's not an attack. It's not, like, an intentional offense, right? Like, it just happens to be a slip up. And given the content of, you know, this, you know, work of fiction in general, we'll take that.
Yes. Yeah. Next episode is a bunch of fights. Like, it is just, it's just fights. It's you know, a couple characters challenge the crew. Oliver meets with the B cast and tells the B cast that Nano has a 7 Spellblade. And B cast, I mean Teresa, Gwen, and Shannon.
Mm-hmm.
He runs into Ophelia, who says don't go out adventuring for the next couple months. And so we meet another guy named Tulio, who was going to fight Pete. And Tulio follows Oliver to the labyrinth, and he's like, I'm going to fight you instead of Pete because Pete's not worth it, but you are. And Oliver's like, I'll defeat you in 8 moves. And he does that. And he says that Tulio has a really interesting fighting style, but since he doesn't know the basics, he won't improve, which is stupid because if Tulio can create new basics, it's fine. But of course, that's not what the show wants to talk about. Oliver then whines about
you are a strong proponent of, everyone knows that schmovement is more important than fundamentals.
Yeah, schmovement is fundamentals. If you can fucking backdash, you win. With an after image, it's over. We get a little, like, self-pity party from Oliver in this episode where he whines about not being special because he everything he knows was taught to him. But, like, yeah, that's just the human condition, right? You learn things.
Fuck all knowledge and ideas.
Yeah, it's very stupid. And then he runs into to Teresa, who tells Oliver that if killing her will make him feel better, he should do it. Which is the fucking most buck wild shit anyone has said of this fucking anime.
Teresa feels like she reads Warrior Cats.
But Teresa's like, if killing me would help you, please do so. And Oliver's like, I'm not gonna kill you. I'm not gonna throw your life away like that. And Teresa gets all like blushy and like, I don't like you, Baka, which is fucking stupid. He didn't kill you. That's not a nice thing. That's just a thing.
That's like, what? How low does your bar have to be that not doing a bad thing that you asked for impresses you?
Yeah, it's dumb. It's stupid. The next episode, we learn a little bit more about womb magic and how women can store mana in their womb.
Great.
Which I'm sure like some people would find really cool. To me it's weird, but I'm not going to say it's like bad. Pete fights Stacy.
Yeah, I think it's weird because I don't use healing crystals on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I think. Like, I'm sure there's some like witchy gal out there who's like, that's fucking powerful. But because this show fucking sucks at doing anything that is meaningful, to me it's just weird. I think because this is told through the male lens, it's a little strange.
Safe to say too that again, this is an essentialist thing. We're gonna talk about that at the end. And that if you come across anybody who's doing this whole like women and womb thing and kind of insisting that that's how this works, and that there's something very important about that, you're probably encountering a transphobe or a TERF of some variety, and probably want to get away from that quick.
Pete fights Stacy, who's Shell's sister, and he loses. That's the important part of that. But he almost wins because he uses his womb magic. Milligan apologizes for trying to steal part of Katie's brain. I don't know if I explained why she wanted to steal Katie's brain, or parts of it. She wanted to study it because the troll Marco talked to Katie and wouldn't talk to Milligan, and so she thought it was something to do with Katie's brain. Like, not because Katie might just be nice.
Yeah, it's more likely that Katie is some sort of psychic than Milligan is just a bad, like, demi-human scientist.
But to be fair, based off of how this show plays out, you normally have to be born with special powers to do anything good.
That's fair.
Katie might be psychic.
Yeah. You're right. I wouldn't put it past them. So
Milligan gives Katie a secret base in the labyrinth. I actually like this episode a little bit. It's a little nonsense. So the whole crew of all 6 of the main characters go to the labyrinth. They meet a group of wacky adventurers who are eating like barbecued monsters. That's led by a man that's known as the Survivor because he disappeared for 6 months in the labyrinth and came back alive. So he starts like a labyrinth eat club, which I think is fun.
You guys like Dungeon Meshi, right? Cool.
Yeah, cool. They run into a vendor who's like, "Hey, all I do is sell supplies down here in the labyrinth," which to me seems like a terrible place to set up shop.
It's an awful hustle.
Because there's not a lot of people there. It's also sprawling. If the thing, I'll talk about this after I finish this synopsis. They managed to find their secret base, which takes literal hours to get to, which seems like a very inconvenient place for a secret base. They clash their swords together to make the Sword Rose, and they call their group the Sword Roses. So we now have a name for our group of 6 people. So here's the thing. In Dungeons & Dragons, there is a place called the Undercity, or the Undermountain. The Undermountain is this giant underground labyrinth that exists under the city of Waterdeep, and it is the Yawning Portal is a tavern that's built on top of it, and it's run by adventurers to keep the stuff from the Undermountain from coming out of the Undermountain into Waterdeep. But what's really cool about the Undermountain is that there are towns and there are places and there's civilization here because it's so fucking massive, right? So like you can go in, you can be crawling through this dank cave and you end up in this like this bazaar of strange like non like top side people, right? So like you have hobgoblins and you have myconoids who are living in this area who are selling each other stuff. You can do a labyrinth vendor, but you have to show that there's civilization here besides the students. And to me, at this point, the school doesn't really feel like it's actually a part of the story as much as the labyrinth is. So I don't know why they didn't do like an adventurers guild into the labyrinth as the main story.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it's also possible that maybe they don't need a good reason for him to be a labyrinth merchant, because maybe he is just bad at it and he's not making any sales.
I mean, true. The labyrinth merchant was a woman, though. Just so you know.
Sorry, I'm confusing. I think I'm. What the fuck? I have two characters confused.
Are you confusing the barbecue guy?
Maybe. Is there a character that was around a bunch of crates and stuff? That's the vision I have.
Yeah. Well, there is the vendor is also around a bunch of crates, but so is the barbecue guy.
Okay, I'm probably getting them confused. You know what? I think I am thinking of the. Was the barbecue guy also in camo?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
That's the person I have in my head. I'm sorry. I did not rewatch any of this show.
Yeah,
which is rare for me before these reviews. But fuck it, I don't care enough.
Yeah,
I care. I care about giving the review, but I don't care enough about certain details. We'll say that.
Yeah. So they create a secret base. Marco shows up at the secret base, the troll, with Katie, and he's like, "Hey, I can help you out because I'm big and strong, and you guys might need someone to help you out with your secret base." And it's like, "Okay, cool, that's fun." And Milligan's like, "Hey, I gave you the secret base because I want you to succeed in helping demi-humans," and she's like, "This is like an investment." The Sword Roses go to explore the labyrinth, and they almost end up in the second area, which Shella says is too dangerous. They run into Stacy again, who suggests that Oliver, Nano, and Shella have a tournament fight with Stacy, Faye, and a man named Joseph. They're like, "Sure, let's do it." So they go to the second lair, which they were told just not to go to fight. Oliver barely gets kind of fucked up from Joseph for a while. Nano fights Faye, the wolf boy, and Shella beats the shit out of her younger sister, Stacy. Stacy casts a spell to turn Faye into a werewolf, and they kind of get on, start fighting together. And Nano's like, "Oh fuck, this is so much harder than fighting just a dude." But since Faye is not a full werewolf, he suffers from the transformation, because it's painful since he's not full. Shella tries to get Stacy to stop, but Faye's like, "Hey, I wanted to do this because I want to beat you," and Shella's like, "Fine, then let's fight." That's episode 10. Episode 11. Oliver and Joseph continue to slap each other around. Stacy and Shella fight with Faye and Nano. Eventually Oliver overpowers Joseph by tricking him to get into the water. And Nano and Shella overcome Stacy and beat him. And then we get not one, but two little backstories. So we figure out that Shella Stacy is Shella's actual sister, not cousin, but because I know I've been saying sister, but whatever. Mm-hmm. And Stacy's whole entire family branch exists because if Shella's family branch dies, they would take over. Shella can't call Stacy her sister because Theodore McFarlane sucks ass and wants to be like, "Hey, look at me and my super impressive, awesome family." He sucks. They have a little bit of a heart-to-heart, and then Joseph then gives Oliver his sad backstory, and he had a servant girl that lived in his house that he loved, and they used to play chess all the time. And one day she finally beat him, and he liked it. He's like, "Oh wow, I can't believe you worked really hard and beat me. Thank you." And then he told his father that the servant girl beat her, and as punishment, the father killed the servant girl and all of her family because Joseph cannot lose. And so Joseph, being upset that he lost, says he wants to wipe everyone's mind of this fight so that no one can say that he lost. They said no, and so he summons a bunch of bees to kill everybody. Katie and Guy create a barricade to help hide from the bees, and Shell's like, well, okay, it's time for me to show you that my birthright as being a super powerful magic user is going to come to fruition. So she's actually a half-elf, and that's super good at dual casting. They can cast 2 spells at once with no repercussions, because everyone that is good in this thing is born with that ability. They fight the bees, and they win. And Shella and Stacy make up. They're like, we're still friends.
But I won't call you sister.
That's in the next episode.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I know. Oliver helps Joseph. Joseph ups. Oh, no, that isn't that episode. No, wait, no, it's not. It's the next episode. Oliver lectures Joseph on how to be a good loser. And then he's like, fine, I accept that I can lose sometimes. And I don't need to be everything like my father does. But then a beast comes and captures Oliver. And not Oliver. It captures Pete, Joseph, and Faye. And everyone thinks that it was Ophelia because she has been consumed by the spell and is kidnapping men for nefarious reasons. It's okay. It's fine. It sucks.
Wait, that's 2 different thoughts.
Yeah, the fight scene was really, really bad. It's not like really good choreography. The animation doesn't carry it whatsoever.
I do like earlier you mentioned that Oliver gets an advantageous position in the fight by luring Joseph into the water, but you didn't describe what the advantage was. So,
I don't remember, okay?
They got in there, they had fun splashing around, and they forgot they were fighting for him.
All you need to know is that Oliver was losing until he outsmarted him, right? That's what Oliver does. He does it until he outsmarts him.
He did a brain blast.
I don't fucking remember what he did. Okay, I don't.
The best part is I don't either.
Yeah, because you know the beginning and the end, but the fight scenes themselves are so fucking boring.
Do you want to come up with something? What the hell did Oliver do in the water to make it so that he could win?
He peed upstream, so Jessica's like, gross. There might be trace amounts of human urine in this.
And then pincer attack from both sides. Oh, it's a pincer attack.
So, I also forgot that Marco the troll stepped in front of Katie and took a bunch of bee stings to the back. Mm-hmm. And we thought he was dead, but he's fine. So that's good, because I like Marco.
Yeah.
So, episode 12 starts, and Pete's been missing for days at this point. And what's really funny is when we watched this episode, because episode 11 does not end. Like, it doesn't go to credits with the characters getting captured. It goes
to credits, then shows them getting captured.
And that's the first time the show ever did a post-credits scene, so we were not ready for it.
So we just hop into the next one and we're like, what the fuck has happened to Pete? We thought maybe they're doing some, like, artistic flash forward thing all of a sudden, but no, it's just we didn't see the last 2 minutes of the previous episode, which in fact were enough context to entirely throw us off, not knowing it.
Yeah. So Oliver asks B-Team, Gwen, Shannon, and Teresa if they can save Pete, and they say sure, we can try. Katie asks the teachers, who say they have to wait exactly 8 days before they can send an expedition to see if the students are okay.
Which is ridiculous. That's more than
so
a week.
Long. That's so long. Shela's dad won't help because he says that Shella has to do it on her own because he's a bastard. So Katie goes to the one person she knows is really powerful, and she asks Milligan, and she's like, hey, Milligan, will you help us? If you can study my body. And Milligan's like, hell yeah, let's go. Everyone's like, dude, that fucking sucks. And Katie's like, hey, let me do what I want to do. I'm going to save Pete, and if I have to take a section of my brain off for Milligan, I'm fine with that. But then Milligan says, hey, Guy and Katie, you have to stay behind because you're not powerful enough. And I think that's the funniest shit. We are in the last arc. Guy has done nothing. 0 things. And he gets fucking sidelined again.
He bakes some, food for them. And that's...
Yeah, he makes some cakes. And then Milligan gives Katie her hand that they cut off. She has 3 hands now. She healed her other hand. It's weird. But she called it the Milla hand, which I think is very funny.
It's one of the best things the show has going for it.
Yeah. So she's like, "That's my Milla hand. It's my little hand, and if I die, you have all my information right there, so you can continue my work." Which I think is fun. I think that's cute.
That's something that is the kind of thought that Milligan would have.
Yeah.
As fucked up as she is.
I think Milligan's actually a pretty okay character in this final arc. I think that I wish that their fight would have been more of like a misunderstanding or something instead of just her being a dumb, stupid, like, I'm gonna be a horrible scientist, like a mad scientist type.
Yeah.
But they really did a 180 with her, and I think it's for the better.
Mm-hmm. But real quick to count, this is, what episode are we going into now? Episode 12?
12.
So that was officially, like, what? 4/5, almost 4/5 of the show that had the demi-human plot, like, pretty smoothly woven through it. Keep that in mind. Alright, let's keep going.
So they, but it's also like, man, this is a great way to end a season 1.
Yeah.
But they don't. They go more. So we get a lot of exposition and dialogue in this episode, and we are immediately met at the beginning, and then we are immediately met with more exposition and dialogue. So Milligan explains that Ophelia is a descendant of succubi, and her family mixed monster DNA with human DNA in the womb to create powerful offspring, and they also mix monster DNA in their own womb to summon monsters. And once again, this kind of goes into that weird, hey, you have to be born from a powerful, like, lineage to do anything cool.
Yeah.
They fight their way through Ophelia's chimeras and try to get to Ophelia's lair on the 3rd floor, I believe, of the labyrinth. And they're like, they fight these ones that don't have eyes, and so Milligan's like, I'm gonna summon decoys that are gonna move slowly, and then they attack all the decoys, and then Milligan moves fast, and then they start attacking Milligan because she's moving fast. She's like, wait a second, what happens if I move slow? So I think that Milligan's a decoy, and then it's like, that's fun. It's a fun little, like, monster of the week.
She's conditioning it, yeah, and they try to spin that into, like a little lesson that Milligan teaches Oliver and Nano later, right?
Yeah.
And so for once, a character other than those two is lecturing them. Which is at least a little bit refreshing, all things considered.
Yeah. So anyway, next episode starts off with Carlos and Alvin, and they're on their way to fight Ophelia because they have a pass with her. And so they talk that Carlos is like a childhood friend of Ophelia, and Ophelia like grew up being like ousted because being the child of a succubi, she like immediately makes people like attracted to her. But since Carlos is not a man, Carlos is not attracted to her, and so they become friends. And so there's like a little backstory with Carlos and Ophelia. We cut back to the main group where Oliver, Nano, Shella, and Milligan stop to eat. Oliver sneaks away to talk to Teresa and says, hey, can you go scout ahead and fight monsters for us while we climb up there? Which is wild that Teresa is able to do all this stuff, but she does. She kills a bunch of monsters, and they climb up a giant tree, and they run into a giant monkey.
Wonder who killed these monsters.
Yeah. That's like That's what they do. They're like, wow, these monsters are dead. I wonder who killed it. It's fucking Teresa. But they don't go anywhere.
Oh, wow.
So they meet this giant monkey who they're gonna fight, and they're like, wait a second, maybe we can befriend it. And they do. And they make friends with the monkey. And then, like, a second later, it gets its head cut off by a mantis chimera. It's so fucking abrupt.
It's so terrible.
They defeat the mantis, and Milligan's like, wow, Nano, you and Oliver love each other. You have a great friendship. We cut to boy jail, where Ophelia's keeping all the men she stole. Joseph and Pete are the only ones to wake up, and he's like, "Oh shit, Pete, you're a girl right now, and that means Ophelia doesn't need you, so she'll probably kill you." And Pete's like, "Well, that sucks." And Joseph's like, "I'm gonna help you get out of here," and he takes his fucking hand and just shoves it into his stomach, like just. It's so ridiculous. He doesn't, like, cut open his stomach or anything. He takes his hand and just, like, shoves it into his stomach.
It's just a JoJo knife hand. Just...
Yeah, it's so funny. And then he pulls out 3 orbs that he kept in his stomach. Why? Put it, if you're going to have, like, a flesh pouch in your body that you keep things in, why not store it in a place without vital organs, like your thighs?
Yeah.
Or your butt. Like, goddamn, there's so much fucking fat in your butt and your thighs that you can store things in, and there's no vital organs there. It's dumb.
But then
he
dumb. Wouldn't be able to do something dramatic that way.
Yeah, so he gives Pete the orbs. One's a smoke orb, one's an explosion orb, and the other's a signal orb.
Have my ass balls. Escape this place.
That would be fucking funny. On my notes, I'm like, Carlos's backstory is fine, but it kind of only exists for the plot. It's a little weird that it came out of nowhere right here. And then the other note I have for this episode is Joseph stabbing himself is fucking funny. It's so funny.
It's weirdly comedic. Like,
yeah. So episode 14 happens. We get a big old time skip. So Pete has been underground for like a week at this point. And it's like 3 days have passed since they entered the labyrinth, which is a ridiculous amount of time. They close in on Ophelia, and Milligan's like, "Hey, Nano, you gotta stay away from Oliver, because as we're getting close to Ophelia, he's gonna smell Ophelia's perfume and get really horny." And they make a couple jokes about it, which is just so fucking stupid. And then they give Oliver some medicine so he's not horny when he smells it.
Which is very funny in concept.
Yeah, like
it's so turn you off medicine. Like,
it's so bizarre. It's such a weird, like. And they do, like, this thing where, like, Nano gets, like, real close to him, and he's like, "What's the matter, Oliver?" And it, like, from his perspective, is, like, looking down on her, and she seems so much shorter in that scene. Like, she is, like, maybe bending over, or maybe, like, I don't know, but she is, like, a good, like, 2 heads shorter than Oliver from his perspective in this scene.
They're deliberately mowing her up, like...
Yeah, and then, like, but the thing is that she's, like, the same height as Oliver.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just such a dramatic shift. It's just weird. They come to a lake, and Milligan is like, "Hey, we can take a boat, but we can also learn how to walk on water, but it's super duper hard." And Oliver's like, "You mean like this?" And then Oliver does it. It's such a useless scene, but it just is like, hey, Oliver can do the walk on water jutsu from Naruto. He's got a lot of chakra. He can do it super easily because he's so good. Oliver never fails in this show.
Did you go for a Naruto reference before referencing Jesus Christ of Christian faith?
No, I said chakra.
I know. I'm saying that there are 2 jokes you could have made. One of which being Jesus Christ.
And the other is Naruto. Yes, I did
Naruto came first.
Yeah, of course it did. It's an anime. There's no anime about Jesus. That's not true. There's a couple. I read a manga about one when I was a good old Christian boy in high school. It was weird. I didn't like it even back then.
I'm surprised you remember it all now that Naruto has infested your brain and apparently taken his place. Do you remember when Jesus Christ said, "Believe it"?
As he's on the cross, instead of saying, he just goes, "Believe it," and then dies.
That's what he told Judas. When he's like, "Judas, you're gonna deny me 3 times before the cock crows, but believe it." Love it, yeah. We should make a Christian podcast.
Oh, that'd be really fun. I've honestly, okay, real quick tangent. I've thought how easy it would be to make like a fucking right-wing grift podcast about anime. Like, we do both ones, and we just post both of them. And we'd probably get, I know, it's very slimy, but we would absolutely get so many more people watching us if we were like, does the woke media want you to like this shit?
Okay,
it'd be
so
really
let's put ourselves in that position for just a moment. Would you then, in that context, make the claim that Oliver is a sufficient Jesus allegory in this show?
No, because there's gay people in the show, and I can't stand for that if I was a right-wing anime podcaster. Did this show go woke? I can't believe that Seven Spellblades is the wokest show of fall 2023. See? It's easy. So they run into Bone Boy Cyrus again, and they're like, "Hey Cyrus, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "I'm here to watch Ophelia die." And they're like, "Okay, we're gonna go also do that." And he's like, "Well, since Ophelia is gonna kill you, I might as well kill you right now," which is a dumb reason to start a fight. They managed to defeat him by luring him into a chimera. His bone snake gets destroyed. We get another talk about Carlos and Alvin as they close in on Ophelia, and Alvin has a flashback on how he became friends with Ophelia. So Alvin wanted Ophelia to join the student council, but he knew that being around Ophelia would make him horny. So anytime he was around Ophelia, he would cast "kick my balls" spell on his own crotch. And he would give himself a kick in the balls through a magic spell. And he would do that every time he saw Ophelia until he no longer found her sexually attractive. Which is kind of like also not great because, like, you know, sexual attraction is part of being human. And Ophelia's whole entire thing is that people don't treat her like human, right? And he's like, "Hey, I want to be your friend, but also I cannot be sexually attracted to you ever in my life."
Here, I have an idea. I'll shock my cock.
And like Ophelia's like, "You know, you could have just taken some medicine and it would have been fine." And he's like, "Well, I wanted to know that I could feel pain for 2 months, just like how you felt pain your whole entire life for being excluded," which is like noble, I guess, but also stupid as hell. So we meet another group of students. Alvin, Carlos, Lazeti Ingu, and Tim Linton. I will say Tim Linton is a cisgendered man who likes to cross-dress, and I think that's fucking rad.
Mm-hmm.
And so they create, and like, this kind of brings up the student council. The student council kind of created it so that less students die, which is nice, but also weird that this is allowed.
Dysfunctional school has the students trying to police themselves instead of, like, you know,
right,
exerting some amount of, like, care and compassion for the people who are going there and paying tuition. Do they pay tuition there? I assume they do. Sure feels like that kind of school.
So anyway, episode 15 happens and everyone is now surrounding Ophelia. We get the fight. There's really nothing that happens in the fight. I'm sure someone could be like, "Oh, it means this, it means this." But the real important thing is that Carlos sacrificed themselves because Carlos and Ophelia are friends, and they were like, "Hey, we're going to go out of this together." And so Carlos sacrificed himself to kill Ophelia. And everything goes back to normal because this is something that normally happens at the school. And there you go. That's season 1 of Reign of the Seven Spellblades. It's It serves almost entirely to get you to buy the light novel, I feel. We're done. It took us 2 hours.
Ugh, not quite.
Not quite, but close. Fuck, man. This show is stinky.
Yeah.
Here's some final notes I have to say before I let we go to themes. The wizards all have different swords, but they don't fight with them in different ways. They all fight with them in the same way, which is super lame. If you're going to have different swords, have them have different fighting styles. You mentioned 3 basic fighting styles, and we see none of them. The school itself is barely a backdrop. I feel like if you're doing a magic school, you got to make your school way more than a plot device. I feel like it has to serve sort of like as a character, right? Like, you think of like Little Witch Academia. The school itself has all this lore and this majesty to it, and it serves as sort of this point of reference for the world as a magic world separated by a world as a technological world. As all the stuff, there's events, there's a town that they go to, right? There's all this stuff that makes it feel like it is a culture. But they don't really get that in this one because they just keep going to the labyrinth. We see the town that the school is in for a second, and then it's gone. Since the bulk of the action takes place in the labyrinth, the school also feels a lot less important. I know I mentioned it earlier. It feels like it never wanted to be a magic show. It feels like it wanted to just do dungeon crawling, which I think you could do, but you gotta change the way that you write some of this stuff. The animation's fine. It gets sloppy. It's JC Staff. I mean, we've watched shows that have sloppy animation, and we're fine with it. But I feel like because the show relies so heavy on these battles, and it does so many of them, they should at least be either lessened so that you can have higher quality ones, or they need to be the main focus of the show. Yeah, those are my closing notes. You got any?
Yeah, I was thinking about the pacing and how it feels, and I was trying to come up with a way to sort of, like, nicely package that thought. And I think it's that this anime feels like it's a summary movie in how it is paced and how it's, like, how it plays out. But it's a TV series. And so you just have that kind of, like, weirdly stunted, like, relatively fast pacing. But it feels like you're jittering all over the place in order to cram everything in. Which is ridiculous considering that, like, A, we're adapting light novels, and B, we got 15 episodes. That's more than most shows get, you know? Instead of, like, I don't know, taking some extra time to, like, wind down, maybe focus in on certain aspects, they just crammed another arc in with episodes, you know, what was it, 12 through 15? Or 13 through 15?
Yeah.
Those didn't have to be there, right? As you mentioned earlier, you could just chop that part of the season off and no one would think any differently of it, really. Like, it weirds me out so much that they did an extended season, but they just did more of it, instead of that having, like, a definitive quality of difference, right? Like, it's really weird. Yeah, it makes me, you know what, I can't speculate too much on why they got 15 episodes, but, yeah, just, I'll say it's something I haven't really, like, come across before in all my time anime watching. It feels very sort of utilitarian in how it just is blasting through plot points, and I think failing to make a strong undercurrent, except for the demi-human stuff, which is not Oliver's motivation, nor is it Nanao's, it's Katie's. Here's my little opinion. I think Katie could have been, like, the protagonist of the show. I mean, it would not, in its current state, you would have to rewrite it, right? But, like, fundamentally, it seems sometimes like they care more about the demi-human plot than actually, like, giving, say, Oliver something to do for 15 episodes. Oliver gets his big thing, and then it's done. And then he's, like, taking up space in everyone else's problems, and stepping in and being like, don't worry, I'll handle your shit. Oliver plays custodian for most of the season. And Nano, in the same way, they almost are kind of, like, they're weirdly similar characters. But, yeah, it's just... It really kind of shocks me to see a show play out where the secondary character's motivation is more smoothly interwoven into the plot than the primary characters. I don't know if you felt the same way, but
yeah. It felt like it's hard to kind of like put into like it felt like there was like not seven, but close to all these different things that they wanted to do, but they didn't want to build the world up to meet them.
Yeah.
Like, the demi-human plot seems like a really good first year event, right? Like, we think of like, fucking Harry Potter. One book is an entire year.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the Quidditch game, you have the puzzles at the end to get the Sorcerer's Stone, you have exploring Hogwarts, but that's it, right? Like, it's a short book,
mm-hmm.
but they're able to kind of piece together everything a little bit because they focus on
it. There's a convergence point.
And it feels like they wanted to make the whole thing about the demi-humans' rights, and then they drop it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's not great.
Yeah. And speaking on, who deserves to be the main character, I feel like Oliver being the protagonist, really kind of... I think it's time we can talk about some broader elements to how the show and maybe how the original work is written. It's got this undergirding of essentialism all the way throughout it. It values the essence of things, or like the principle of characters' beliefs. It focuses on like telling you how things are or should be, more than actually justifying those things, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of like, yeah, just believe me on this. This is how this works. And I think Oliver is like an important mouthpiece of that. Not only in just that he's lecturing everything, but additionally that like he is undoubtedly the protagonist, but so little of what he does feels very main character-y, We know he's the main character because everybody loves him. We know that he's the main character because he's stupidly powerful and also the underdog at the same time. These are constructs that like are typically applied for that like slapdash sort of main character construction. It's very easy to write things that are interlocking with that, right? If your character can be, in this case, the jack of all trades, master of none, but also is secretly the best in the world, as long as you like kill his mom first, then great, you have an excellent excuse to write whatever you need to for that character, right? Oliver is allowed to be malleable to a fault, right? He can be a cold-hearted, badass assassin and also fumble his way through very basic social situations because you and I know he is the main character. But nothing about how he's written would suggest that in like a more organic sense, right? We just know because this is how it goes. It's essential that he is a type of main character we're used to. Did you have something you wanted to input on that?
Yeah, we get a little bit of glimpse of people like working hard, right? We see the servant girl working hard to be chess master. We see Pete working hard to become part of this we see Pete working hard to be a new mage in a non-magical family. but we don't see any of their hard work pay off.
Mm-hmm. Katie might be the exception there with Marco, you know?
Yes.
But everyone else is basically, like, left hanging, or is downgraded to a spectator.
Right.
Yeah. Of course, we already talked about, too, like, the fact that he'll just straight up steal credit for things, you know? It really does feel like he's not... He is and isn't built to be the main character, right? He doesn't have the charisma for it. He doesn't have the likability or the relatability for it. However, like, the fact is that it's that easy to just say, no, Oliver is in charge of this situation. Oliver is the person you should listen to. Because all you have to do is make all the other characters listen to him. It's totally within your power as an author, right? He doesn't feel like a living character. He feels like a bad bandage job over a hole, you know, where a protagonist should be. But it's okay, because the essentialist method of writing the show allows that to happen. And I strongly feel like essentialism takes other forms in the show. Nanao is one I've been mentioning repeatedly. You know, she's weirdly orientalized in the writing. Not only, like, you know, her home country literally having the same, like, namesake with a slight adjustment to the pronunciation or the translation of, like, how that's written. But, you know, she's characterized as being uncivilized yet strictly principled, and she's carefree, but she's quick to anger, and she's mystical in these ways that the other Eurocentric characters are not, right? It's very, very classically Orientalist, you know, like that vision of the East, and, you know, wow, who are these people? You know, it's, it does feel like, seriously, a stereotype. And that bothers me. It really kind of does. You know, she is like the mythologized version of a Japanese person inserted into this very, like, intentionally Western story, you know, brought to us from a Japanese perspective. And I don't know if that's, like, just the cunning of the author to be like, yeah, they'll eat this shit up, and I know what Westerners like, and, like, leaning into that. Or if it is, like, sort of buying into that conservative mythology. Like, it's, you know, I am not qualified to say. I don't know enough about the author. But still, you know, Nanao is essentialized in that way. This also, of course, comes to the side characters and how they're written. In the same way that we know Oliver is the main character, on that, we also know who is not the main character. And so we have people like Katie, like Milligan, like Pete, who have pretty significant standing in the plot, but really don't feel like they get, as you said, the payoff or respect they kind of deserve. And I think that there's a lot of detriment from the amount of time we spend running around tying up side characters' plots that, you know, frankly don't need that much time given to them. Like, Andrews is very predictable, right? Like, from the first moment he stepped on screen and acted like a brat, it was like, okay, yeah, they're gonna redeem this guy, right? He's gonna get his shit kicked in, and then he's gonna, like, become chill with them for a bit, and then he'll either stick with them and become a new member of the party, or he'll disappear, and of course he just disappears, right? Then there's characters that have unpredictable U-turns like Milligan, you know, where she's, like, premeditating serious violence on another student, and then just, like, they just redeem her like that. And so, like, there's this, like, essential proponent to quote-unquote good storytelling of make sure your side characters have their own arcs and build them up, but it commits to that without having the execution chops to make it feel meaningful in the plot or connecting it with any central themes aside from, maybe the demi-human running plot. And so it just feels like we're wasting a bunch of time spinning in circles with, side characters before being pushed along to the next thing that Oliver's supposed to solve. Like, Teresa and Shannon, in my opinion, like, really shouldn't get mentioned at all. Like, they functionally only exist for convenience and contrivance, right? They amount to nothing in the plot from what I can remember,
Right.
And so I feel like it's kind of an insult to be wasting time teasing them, Shella and Pete, they both, have these essentializing aspects to them, but I think more so in this biological essentialism category. You've mentioned how blood is very important. Anybody who's special in this show has some fucking bloodline aspect that, like, gave them that power, right? It's inherited. You're born with it. We know that with Shella and her, half-elf heritage. And she has that intersectionally with womb magic. That's how she's able to tap into that. We have the fact that Shella will not call Stacy her sister, because the family is this inalienable unit of, objective quality. You just...
Well, and the worst part is Shella is like, hey, I consider you my family, even though I can't call you sister. And it's like, why not?
Yeah.
Fucking no one is around to punish you. Do it.
Yeah, it's absurd. It's so caught up in insisting that this is the way things are, that it won't take that final step to just change that, And I will say that, like, the gender and sexuality stuff does take that extra step in a way, but it also gets fucked up by essentialism. Anything magical that's sex-based is, really problematic in that way, where, based on your biological sex, checks. Sorry.
Yeah.
You use magic differently, right? So if you have a womb, great. Then you can store mana differently than other people, right? Like, that's just that. If you are, a male, then you're going to be affected by Ophelia's magic. It has nothing to do with your actual sexuality, right? It's literally down to what body composition do you have? Like, genetically, who are you? That's what these pheromones activate. It's ridiculous. And it's, sure, it's fantasy, but the unreality of it is reinforcing existing stereotypes about things like gender and sexuality. For example, when it comes to Reversi, right? Like, there is indeed, that's a transgender and gender fluid sort of, like, allegory there, taken in physical form, but it has this, like, backhanded effect where it insists that, like, yeah, the only way you get this is when it's not your choice, right? Like, I guess we do have, right, Tim, was it, that does dress, cross dresses at leisure, right? Like,
but that is only in the light novel. I found that out because I was trying to determine, because we don't really get a lot of Tim, and I was like, is Tim trans? Is Tim a girl with a boy's name? What's the deal with Tim? And so I looked it up.
Gotcha. But yeah, it's, it's one of these things where it's like, true, for some people it is not a choice. Like, you feel it, that you are a different person than your body corresponds to. But for some people it is a choice, that you just, feel like, hey, I want to do things differently, and this is not, like an essential part of me, but it's something that I want to entertain and tease and, like, experience. And so we only get the essentialist part of the story, right? I also think it's sort of frustrating, say, that, Pete doesn't seem to show, like, romantic affection for Oliver until suddenly Pete's transforming into a girl, right?
Yeah.
Like, that raises questions with me, right? Perhaps for someone who's not, like, entrenched in this aspect of living, like, maybe this does seem like a big progressive leap. But for the rest of us, this is also just sort of, it's the same old thing that we've seen a bunch of times before, right? It is kind of demeaning. I doubt the author means it to be. I'll bet this is a big step forward for the author. And, frankly, they probably should be proud of taking that step compared to their contemporaries. But it's not there yet. Keep going, Let's see. Biological race also, we've tapped into that somewhat, but, I guess, I was worried a little bit at first, where it's like, Shella is a half-elf, and she's going to use this magic. This is a special race thing for her. By the way, she's like the one person of color in our main cast. Thankfully, elf is not like a skin color coded race in this world, according to some stuff ahead in the light novel. So, there's that. It's not that elven heritage is directly making that allegory, but I definitely was sweating there for a moment.
Yeah.
And I guess ultimately what this comes to with this underlining essentialism is that for its attempts to be a counter narrative, it's misleading, right? When we're canonizing that, like, marginalized people are just as capable as everyone else, and the reason why is they have superpowers, we already do deal with that, right? And it's a damaging narrative. The whole idea that, like, say, like, black people are more physically adept than other races, even though the science does not pan out on that, right? Like, any of these cases of fascism over the years where, we cycled the drain of phrenology and eugenics, trying to splice out a biological race where there does not exist one. That race is just a social construct. And that we haven't affirmed that with everybody yet. The fact that we are sort of playing with that biological and, other essentialist concepts, I think is kind of playing with fire. It does disappoint me that the progressive elements of the show so consistently line up with that perspective.
Yeah. It's sloppy. It has. Here's the thing. What it has done is it has set up a world in which it can criticize, which is potentially good. Stormlight Archives does that, right? It creates this essentialism. It creates this world that is unjust and that the characters are okay with. But the plot line is about how they all come to realize that the society that they live in is unjust and not good. It takes like a 1,000-page book before it gets there, but during that time, it does have people pointing out the injustices of it, right? And so the problem with this is that if this is supposed to set up a world in which there are these unjust systems that they're trying to focus, or that essentialism is not a good thing, we don't have anyone within the story as we see it currently critiquing it, so it's hard to believe that that is what is going to be the end result. Yeah. And Spellblades is a show that could say a lot, but I do not think that there is a single person that was in the I don't think that that's what he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Also, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 11 producers on this show.
Oof.
That is something that I picked out while looking into the background of this. This show has a ton of people backing it because it is a popular light novel in Japan, and it is popular in the West. But the anime currently only has a 6.6 on my anime list, which is pretty low.
Especially for my anime.
Either way, yeah. I'm not entirely sure where I want this show to go. I'm sure like I could read the light novel or I could figure out what happens, but I'm not sure what I want. I'm not sure where I think the show could go. It created a system that kind of sucks and didn't really go out of its way to criticize it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And frankly, I'm not in a position where it's like, I don't care to see Oliver go and slaughter the other 6 people that he wants to, you know, like, I'm not interested in that at all. We got one of them in one season, like, and not only that, it was halfway through, and then we spent the rest of the season doing other things. Like, I can't imagine how prolonged this is going to be, if we're taking the same sort of, like, ratio of progress, so, oof.
Yeah. I am not a fan. And I don't think that there's much you could do. I feel like we've talked enough about themes. I feel like we've hit it.
Let's wrap things up.
Fun fact about the director. The director of this show is also the storyboard for the Magical Girl Rising project. Whoa!
Huh.
He did a lot of storyboard. This is one of the very few pieces he's directed. The only other director spot he has, his name is Masato Matsune, and once again, this is not his work. It seems, he's adapting it. It is. He did Wixauce, Diva Alive. That was another director for him. And that's about it for director. But yeah, he's mostly a storyboard guy, which makes sense why they would bring him on to direct this. I thought there was too much. There's too much.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like that, like, storyboarding mentality was really brought hard into the directorship of it. Like, I really can't think of that many moments that I felt were striking, like, close your eyes and imagine some of the fight scenes and tell me, like, what was, like, one cool part. Like, in Sword Art Online, there's that one part in the first episode that I think is really dumb, where Kirito gets mad and runs at a random wolf on the plains and then does a big sword thrust at it while he's screaming at it and just, like, kills it in one shot or whatever. And I think it's dumb.
I will live.
But, like, I haven't forgotten it yet. Like... So I don't have any of those really with this show. I like... Nothing inspirational. Which maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe this was just like a let's do it kind of job. But yeah. I hope that... And I'm sorry if this hurts anybody. But I hope that we'll be free of this property and can move on to animate other things.
Yep.
Gave it a shot. Yep. I don't think it adapts well.
Nope, I don't think so. And I also think that I just think that it ended up being I'm sure that there's something in the light novel that is redeemable. Something, maybe. But this show did not translate well into anime unless the light novel is also this bad. But do you have any hypotheticals?
I have one.
What's your hypothetical?
What's a different show that really could have used those extra 3 episodes?
Oh man, you should have told me that before, because that is a long fucking. That is. Let's see what we have.
Stream of consciousness. You don't have to pick one. Just lay it out, because this is all I've got.
Yeah, that is a really good question. Let's see.
And let's assume that this means that you wouldn't get season 2. So this would be you get these 3 episodes and nothing, or you can wait forever for a potential season 2.
I think Deca-Dence could have used an extra 3 episodes.
Yeah.
I think because it is a dense show. There's a lot of good shit in it. But I feel like if you paced it out a little bit, there could have been some more fun characterizations. Mm-hmm. Wonder Egg Priority, easy.
Yep, that's the one I was thinking of.
Easy 3 extra episodes. That's it. That's all it needed.
Wonder Egg Priority could have been a different result if it had 3 extra episodes.
I 100% agree. Healer Girl, maybe. I feel like Healer Girl felt a little short on some parts. I feel like an extra 3 episodes might have helped that. Yeah, those are my 3.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's just got to be Wonder Egg for me. The fact that like, they did the special, and
it
still wasn't enough for a lot of people. Yeah, like I have made my peace with it, and I will appreciate what they decided to end on. But for the greater good, I am really interested to see what they would have done with not only like one more little go at it, right? But like, to be able to have 3 more episodes, right? Little truncated segments of storytelling. I think structurally it would have led to things ending differently, and I'm really curious as to what that would be.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I have a question.
Oh,
I do want to buy the Blu-ray. I want to buy the Blu-ray for Wonder Egg so bad. By the way, it's the art is so fucking beautiful. If you were a magical teacher at Kimberly, what arbitrary rule would you have on your students so that they would fail your class?
Oh wow. Let's see. Now, are we, like, do you want me to do this like a personality quiz where I'm supposed to come up with something that reflects me, or like, or am I supposed to cast myself as a character in the show, and like, what would a character in this show do?
What would a character in this show would do, but also in a way that you would do it too. So, like, if you were a bastard at this Kimberly Dark Academia, what would you do to make it so that like you could take points whenever you felt like it? And of course, it's got to be something. You can't just say like breathing, right? It's got to be something.
Ooh, this is tough because as a teacher, most of the time I was getting rid of rules that I didn't care about.
Yeah.
Jesus, this is hard. If you have something, go for it, because I gotta think.
I would make it so that you're not allowed to refer to things in their proper form. So, like, if someone, I would teach some, like, combat magic or whatever. Like, yes, this is my Asymphthe, or whatever they call their swords. Like, now that's a sword. That's a 1 point off. Get the fuck out of here. It's this long-winded name for Nana. That's a bird. Sorry. If you use the scientific name for anything, that's a point. I don't want to hear it.
You know what? Down talking oneself.
That's too nice.
No. But
that's
here's the thing: is that it would suck ass for everybody because it would also turn into a fucking long talk. You know. And it would, and to the point where, like, if one person does it, it's like, sure, you lost a point, but it's almost worse. Like, you would start having people bartering and saying, hey, can I lose more points so that we don't talk about it? Like, look, I'm sorry. Like, I know I shouldn't say I want to kill myself, because I don't really mean it. But, like, can we not do this right now? I have to get to a class after this, and I have to walk, like, 10 minutes just to get there. So, like, can we not?
It's good. It's good. All right. You got anything else you want to talk about Seven Spellblades?
No,
we did it. We talked about it. It's long as fuck. Brantley, what's our next one we're gonna talk about?
I don't fucking know.
You know what I think we should talk about?
What should we talk about?
While it's hot, we should probably. I know we would do a couple unfamiliar territories in a row, but I honestly think we need to discuss Scott Pilgrim as a media franchise with the anime.
Really?
I think if we talk, I think you and I have consumed the graphic novels. We've consumed the movie, and we've consumed the anime. I think there's some discussion to have there.
All right, it might not be pretty.
All right.
Grant Liddell versus Brantley McCord. Fight.
All right, thank you so very much for listening to us. You can check us out here on YouTube where we talk about anime and stuff, Or you can check us out somewhere else, like on twitch.tv, where we stream games. We just finished Ghost Trick, and I don't know what we're going to do next. I think something.
Well, probably we'll play Steve O'Gorman's new game, and then after that, Sonic Frontiers put out a whopper of DLC that we have to do.
That's right. That's right. So check us out on that. Or you don't need to do any of that, because we are not your dads.